When I first came to Fort Valley many years ago, I was intrigued by many stories that the locals had told me. They told me stories about the way things used to be and where things used to be, but the one story I was most curious about was the story of the massive Indian burial ground that was located in the center of Fort Valley. It was located just off of Fort Valley Road. I had passed it several times on the way to Edinburgh, and one day whenever I passed, I saw a flash of red at the top of it, and I thought, well, maybe that's just a grocery bag. But again, curiosity got the best of me. I stopped the car, turned around, went up, pulled off the road, and I looked a little closer from the road, and it was then that I noticed that it was actually a Confederate flag, a small grave Confederate flag. Now, Indian burial mounds and those stories were nothing new to me. Although I'm not an expert, I had visited the burial mound in Moundsville, West Virginia a few times. And even though I wasn't an expert, I did know enough to know they didn't put Confederate flags in there. No, the conical mound wasn't a Native American burial site at all. But in fact, the Lichliter Family Cemetery, sitting atop this small hill. The strangest cemetery in all of Fort Valley. Now, the hill back in the day used to be much larger than it is right now, but because it's made of shale, people used to excavate here. One of the former owners of the property was excavating part of this hillside away, and he kept going back. One of the local residents came to him and said, "Hey, just how far back do you intend on going?" And the former owner said, "Well, when I see feet, I'll stop." It's hard to believe that over 20 people are buried in this family cemetery, dating back to Johann Jacob Lichliter in 1826. A few veterans were laid to rest here over the years, and burials came to an end around the mid-1950s. Today, the site is in need of love and attention. The steep trail that leads up to the burial site is laced with prickly pear, and the cedars seem to have taken up residence. Weird how that one flicker of red brought me up here so many years ago. And I'm glad I did it. I needed to know the truth, because believe it or not, there are still some residents today who claim that that weird shale hill along Fort Valley Road is indeed an ancient Indian burial mound. So maybe this cemetery isn't the strangest one in all of Fort Valley. Maybe it's just has an odd backstory. But if you would like to visit the Lichliter Cemetery or any other cemetery here in Fort Valley, just keep in mind that many of the small cemeteries are on private property, and you have to get permission from the landowner before you just traipse out across the field to do some genealogy or just be curious and start poking around. Give them a call, send them an email, maybe even knock on the door. You might be surprised that they're just as enthusiastic about the history of their cemetery and may want to come along and share some stories and anecdotes about the piece of history that's on their property.